Hello and welcome to another episode of Studio Tech. We're going to be looking at a new camera from Canon. That's the G30. It's either the VIXIA or the VIXIA, depending whether you're in Europe or the US or some other part of the world. But the important thing is it's known as the G30. This camera should be shipping in June 2013. And we're very lucky to get our hands on a very early model of the camera. The camera is the consumer or prosumer version of the Canon XA25, which is a semi-professional camera that Canon announced just before NAB 2013, at the same time as announcing this camera. So it shares a lot of the common components. It has the same processor, the same image sensor, and the same lens. It's actually a 20x zoom lens, which is exciting in a camera at this price point. The price point in the UK is currently £1,300 and around $1,700 in the US. When the predecessors to this came out, the G10 came out a couple of years ago, it started off at that price point. But within about a year, it was down to about 2/3 of that. And we would expect to see the same with this camera. So depending when you watch this video, you might want to check out the price. Now, the G30 is a nice compact unit and has some great features. So before we put it to the test and actually plug it into our system so you can see it in action, we're going to have a close-up and look at the various connectors and the buttons and the options that are on board the camera itself. So we're looking at the left-hand side of the camera, which is the side that has most of the controls on. So from the front, there is a lever at the front which operates a lens barrier, a lens hood, saves you having to take a lens cover on and off. It does come with a lens cover if you would usually use that, and you can just remove the hood. Behind that is a rotary ring. This can be configured to either be the focus or the zoom ring. Behind that are, at the bottom of the camera, there is a rotating button which is user assignable to whatever function you want from the menus, and tucked away just right underneath, just down here, is a user assignable button. We then have the display on the side of the camera. We'll open that in a second. And above that is the camera on-off switch. On the G10s, this was a push button, but on this, it's a slide switch. One way for camera, middle is off, and media on the far side. And then behind that is a power or charge LED. The screen has a couple of buttons which are set up for autofocus or manual focus, and for pre-record. And then on the side of the camera is the slots for the SD card, 2 SD card slots, and then behind that a couple of buttons, the review recording button, which can actually be assigned. Many of these buttons can be assigned to other things, and then below it is the battery information display button, which turns information on or off from your display. So a quick look at the back of the camera. There are 3 buttons on the left-hand side. The top button allows you to switch between focus and zoom on the ring, the dial at the front of the camera we looked at. So that's how you switch the functions between them. Then there are 2 user assignable buttons that you can assign from the menus. There's a battery. Obviously the viewfinder you can pull out and angle up to make it easier to use depending on the angle you're holding the camera. And then on the far side there is the red button there is start, stop and record. To the just to the right of that is a multifunction button. It's sort of a rocker button, and you can press it in to select things on the menus, and then just below that is a function button. So nice selection of buttons on the back of the camera, and the position of the focus and zoom button is very useful in our use of the camera in the last couple of days. It's just nice to be able to quickly switch that over. So looking at the right hand side of the camera, obviously you have the grip. Your hand goes under here when you're holding it, adjustable grip. You have these holes in the middle here are a little built-in speaker for when playing back clips. There are two plastic covers or rubberized covers over the various connectors. At the back there is the DC in connector for the power supply, and also the AV out connector. And then at the front there are 5 connectors. There's a headphone socket for monitoring. There's an external microphone. Very important that you use an external microphone for capturing any decent audio. We then below that have the HDMI output, and the camera does give clean HDMI output once you've set that in the menu. And there is a USB terminal. And finally below that is a remote terminal for connecting commercially available remote controllers. So looking at the top of the camera, obviously by the grip there is a rocker for zoom. There is adjustment for the camera whether you want it in auto, manual or cinema mode. Little slide there. At the back here under a cover is a specialist hot shoe for attaching various Canon products. You have a standard hot shoe, and then the microphones you can see positioned here. On the bottom of the camera you have the battery release switch, have a tripod plate, and you have the camera identification with the serial number. So that was a pretty good look at the camera and the buttons and connectors it has on the outside. But what does it have inside? What are the features of this camera? Well, first of all, it is the 20 times zoom lens, which we very much like. The previous cameras that we've had, HF G10s in the studio here, have only been a 10 times zoom lens. So having 20 times is a big improvement. You can put the camera into full manual mode. And that is something that as you get to use a camera more and more, you'll want to be able to do. So not only does it have all the manual controls for aperture, for focus, for zoom, but it also importantly has the microphone in connector as well. The touch screen is very nice. It's an OLED touch screen, and that works much better than on previous models. The sensor is a new sensor. It's an HD CMOS sensor, and that's coupled with the Digic DV4, which is a pretty new processor from Canon as well. So this camera really has been sort of re-engineered from the ground upwards. It's not just tweaks on previous models. Of course, it does have the Wi-Fi control. That allows you to control the camera, so you can zoom it, you can focus it. We've been using it at the moment. This is very early in pre-release, and the interface that we've been using on a iPhone is basically a web page. As yet there is no application. I don't know whether Canon are going to be coming out with an application to control the camera or not, but that would be a great additional feature if they did. You can also use the Wi-Fi capability to share clips and upload them. And finally, probably one of the most important functions for us is that not only does it record in AVC HD mode with 28 megabits per second, and you will know that AVC HD is not necessarily the most user-friendly format to edit, but it also records in 35 megabits MP4 format. And not only that, you can actually simultaneously record both of those formats at the same time. So you can have the best of both worlds, as it were. So now let's have a look at some video that we shot just outside the studio here. So the camera was just set up on a tripod and we did a white balance, and then just showing you the zoom capability of the 20 times zoom. And then once we had zoomed in, we had a little visitor. So we kept the camera rolling just for a couple of seconds before we moved it over to a still shot of some of the flowers and vegetation just outside. You have to bear in mind that the video that you're seeing has been compressed, but I hope you were pleased with those external shots that we took. Now, Studio Tech is all about technology primarily in the studio, hence our name. So how does the new Canon HF-G30 do in the studio? Well, what I've done is I've set up the HF-G10, which we're currently using ahead, and just to its right is the HF-G30. We have white balanced them both now on the same test card. We have set them both to the same aperture. They're actually at f2.8 and the shutter speed is at a 50th. So we've set them up as close as we can in exactly the same place. So this is the HF-G10 and now this is the HF-G30. Now the thing that we have noticed, there is actually a lot more sort of color detail, and the skin tones and the blues the back of the wall here are much more vivid on the G30. Just so that you can compare the two, let's just flick between them. That's the G10 again. And this is the G30. Now we compress this down to 6 megabits per second when we upload to YouTube. If you are, to get the best, try and watch this in 1080p, but you have to bear in mind that the signal has been compressed a lot. And it does make me laugh a little, all these tests of various cameras that are put up on YouTube, and you can't really tell how good they are just from the YouTube. But you should be able to see some differences, and I think that we can see here some pretty good differences, and it's clear to us that the HF-G30 is a step up from the HF-G10, and given that it's a camera that's been designed 2 years later, that is not surprising at all. We really like the OLED display on the camera. We're not going to give you a lot of detail about all the menus, but we are just going to take a quick look at the display, and particularly at the Wi-Fi capability. So looking at the very nice OLED display on the side of the camera, I'm not going to go through all the functions. I am going to show you the Wi-Fi capability and just have a quick look at some of the menus. So first of all, let's enable Wi-Fi. So we go to function and we just do the page down and we select a Wi-Fi remote and we say we want to turn it on. That gives us the camcorder's SSID and the URL we have to put in the browser on our phone. Go back now to the main screen. So on my phone, got my iPhone 5 here, so we have to join the network. So we'll go to the networks. There is the Legria camera, so we'll select that. Just takes a few seconds to join the network. Come out and we go to Safari browser, and I've already got in the address here. It's coming up with an error because we already had it connected. If I just hit retry, it will retry, and there we are. That's the basic controls. I can switch live view on and you can see that there's live view. There is a little bit of latency, so if I put my hand in front, you can see it's not full fluid motion video, but it is fine for focusing and zooming. If I want to zoom, 3 levels of zoom. I can zoom a little bit more. It is a very small buttons, and I would much prefer if there was an app that did this. Hopefully Canon will come out with one Monday. You can start and stop the camera recording. And there is a couple of other tabs. Just have a quick look at the advanced control tab. This one you have to use in landscape and gives you a lot of manual control over the camera. Again, it has live view. You can hit the button. So that is the Wi-Fi remote control. Quick look at a couple of the menus. So go to function and we hit menu again. And you set up the Wi-Fi right at the bottom of the screen in here. And you can set it up for a smartphone connection or an access point or for FTP server settings. Let's go in to look at the movie format. So the formats here are AVC, HD or MP4. And the recording mode, and then that shows you the 4 recording modes on that screen, and back there's one more, there's 3 at the bottom, so including the 35 megabits per second mode. Now if you want to find out more about its big brother, that's the Canon XA25, do either look on the studiotech.tv website under the Studio Tech episodes and find Studio Tech episode 70, or find it on YouTube. And that is a video that we shot at the NAB show in Las Vegas this year, back in April. And that has been a very popular video looking at the XA25. But we hope to have an XA25 in the studio within the next month or so. So that concludes our look at the Canon HF-G30. So what do we think? Well, we think that this is a much better camera than the HF-G10, and that shouldn't be surprising. Would we replace all of our HF-G10s with G30s? Well, maybe, if money were no object. But I think what is important about this camera is that it does have that 20x zoom lens. And we frequently find that our HF-G10s, even though they're only sort of 2.5, 3 meters away, 9, 10 feet away, that they can't zoom in close enough on some bits of equipment. So to replace one of them, at least initially, with either the HF-G30 or the XA25 makes a lot of sense for us. But if you are looking to putting a studio together and you're looking at specifying cameras, then we can recommend the HF-G30. It does have HDMI output, so we're running all our cameras here into Blackmagic Design or Atomos converters that convert from HDMI to SDI, and that goes into our SDI hub and then into our TriCaster for streaming and recording and switching. So if you don't want to go through the converter, then I would have a look at the XA25, which does have all the features that we've talked about of this camera and more, as well as an SDI output. So we like the image quality and we like the zoom lens. We like the fact that you can do dual recording on AVC HD and MP4. So this camera definitely gets a thumbs up from us. So thanks for watching this episode of Studio Tech. If you're watching this on YouTube, that's fantastic, but please subscribe to our channel, studiotech.tv. But the other thing that you can do is to watch our live show. We have a live show every week. And the important thing with that show is not just the fact that it's much more fun and interactive, but there is a real community gathering in our chat room, and friendships are being made across the world with like-minded people looking to improve their skills and their equipment and for their production of internet television. So you can find that every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. UK or 2000 CET, and you can go to live.ttfn.tv to join the stream and to link to the chat room. Do follow me on Twitter at ttfntv. Don't worry, we don't tweet very often. We just tend to tweet when we put new videos up or interesting things happen. So thanks for watching, and we hope you'll join us again soon for another episode of Studio Tech.